Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another wonderful tasting with a virtual tasting society. Today, we're excited to welcome a brand that we have not had a tasting with yet. We've had an event in the past. We've made some amazing pancakes, but today we're excited to finally taste through the awesome lineup from Angel's Envy to round out our heavenly month of December. And the lovely Cassie is here to tell us all about everything we're going to taste, tell us about the distillery, and whatever else they have coming out. I know we're finally excited to taste a new addition to the core lineup. Our lineup today is the classic bourbon, the rye, the cask strength bourbon, a bourbon barrel pick. What else we got? We got the triple oak, and then we got
Mhm.
the new make. Cassie, do you have an order you want us to lighten those up in? I know some people have six
Um,
glasses in front of them.
yeah, I know that you guys have done the new make before. In what order do you guys normally drink that?
I don't think it's an issue for us. Nobody's shooting it, and we're just gonna taste it.
Okay, then why don't we start with the new make?
Okay.
And let's do the bourbon triple oak rye single barrel cask strength.
Okay.
We'll do it that way because I like to do the two bourbons side by side. I know that the triple oak is the newest to the lineup, so people tend to want to drink it after the rye because we've had the rye longer, but the rye is just so sweet. I always recommend drinking it last.
So we're
Um,
doing the rye before the high proof stuff. So it makes sense. I think you've lined them up in proof order. So
yeah,
that
like
makes a lot of sense. Other than the new make, and if of course the new
yeah.
make's meant to be for us to taste the new make, leave a little bit for as you go to see if you can if it carries through the distillery character. It's a rare opportunities for us to try some new make. So thank you very much for getting us that for us. It's not something
Yeah,
we can go pick up off the shelf.
it's such
So
an
you
exciting idea.
you said that so fast. Could we go through the order you're going to do it in
Yeah,
again
of course.
slowly,
Okay, so we're gonna start with the new make. Oh yeah, let's
right?
put it in the chat.
There you go.
So we're gonna do. Oh, thanks, Jane. Jane got it. What a star. Yeah,
You
so
got
it's
it.
the new make bourbon, triple oak, rye, single barrel, cask strength.
Great job. Thanks, Jane. Or if you just look at the proofs, line them up in proof order, and then we're going to start with a new make.
Yep.
But yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We have some familiar faces. We got some new ones. We got some people who have been with us for years and have been busy but have come back. Looking at you, Damon. Welcome back, buddy. Good to see you. Um, but yeah, we got everyone here. Thanks for being here. Cassie, please introduce yourself. Tell us about what you do, where you're from, and lead us through this.
Awesome. Hi guys. I'm so excited to be here. I love whiskey. I've been a whiskey nerd for a long time. I'm Cassy Crandall. I'm the Los Angeles ambassador for Angel's Envy. Which means basically I get to be a nerd and go around. I kind of describe it as being the personality hire of Angel's Envy. I go around and chat with people about it and make friends, and it's the best job in the whole world. I got my whiskey knowledge from a bar in downtown called Seven Grand. I was a bartender at the main bar back there, and then I was a curator in Bar Jackalope in the back bar back when they still had their whiskey curating program. And so my job for a long time was to talk to people about what kind of whiskeys they liked and then go in the back and put together a special whiskey flight for you that I thought that you would enjoy. So that felt like just a really natural transition into going into Angel's Envy. I have loved it for a really long time. The rye, I will say it again later, the rye is one of my favorite spirits in the world. It was the first whiskey I really fell in love with. Um, but yeah, that's about me. I'm from Arizona. How fascinating. Okay. I also, if at any point I say anything that anyone has a question about, please feel free to turn your mic on, raise a hand. I really believe passionately in making whiskey accessible and making knowledge accessible to everyone. And I had a chat with Vadim about how all of you are very well versed in your whiskey world and whiskey knowledge. And so We're probably going to breeze through a lot of the more introductory level kind of things that I tend to walk people through when I'm talking about bourbon. But if there's anyone in the room, please, I would like to just take a second to say, like, please don't be embarrassed to ask me a question or to ask me to elaborate because, you know, we all, at one point, we all started there too. No, nobody knows anything right out of the gate. Everybody has to ask. So that being
So,
said, oh yeah,
so I live in Phoenix now. I used to live out there with Vadim and them.
no
Does that
way.
mean does that mean I can come get a bottle of that new make after, we finish it?
Well, I'm from Arizona, but I live in
Uh,
Los Angeles. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I'll actually I'm going home for Christmas, so I'll be there on Monday. But
nice.
yeah, I'll send you, there's the whiskey ambassador, the Angels Envy ambassador in Phoenix. Her name's Chelsea. She's a genius. She's been with Angels Envy for a long time. I've only been with them for like 6 months, but I was in the bar world for a really long time before that. So anyway, enough about me. I feel like I was jabbering a lot before we started anyway. So I'm just gonna jump right into it, into the world of Angel's Envy. Is anyone here in this room new to Angel's Envy? Oh, hell yeah. Hey guys. One of the fun things about this brand is that we do have quite a cult following, which is really fun. Because we consider ourselves to be a house of finished whiskey. So everything that we release, that we produce to the public, whether that's our bourbon, our rye, our cask strength, all of it is going to be finished. That it's the brainchild of a man named Lincoln Henderson, who was he was the very first inaugural inductee into the Bourbon Hall of Fame. He is a legend in the whiskey distilling world. He was responsible for Woodford Reserve and Gentleman Jack. He also, once he retired, he became the Japanese whiskey ambassador, and he is credited for taking Japanese whiskey to the Eastern whiskey market. And as he was retired, because he always loved Japanese whiskey, and he was sitting at the table with his son, Wes Henderson, and Lincoln had always wanted to go into finished whiskeys and to do those things, but I'm sure, as all of you know, bourbon world is very, I don't want to say regimented, but incredibly traditional in that there's a certain guideline that you walk through in order for it to be bourbon. It has to be 51% corn. It has to be aged in new American oak for a minimum of 2 years. It has to be bottled at this and distilled at that. So in order for it to fit into that realm, you have to stick very closely to these rules that are actually government mandated in order for you to release yourself as a bourbon. And when he was at Brown-Forman, they told him that they didn't want to push the edges of that because they wanted to just stick with bourbon and stick with what's good. And so after he went into retirement, his son, Wes Henderson, at a dinner table conversation, convinced his dad to come out of retirement and to start a distillery together in which they only released a house of finished whiskey. And Angel's Envy is actually the very first bourbon to be finished in anything in Kentucky. So it's a pretty common I wouldn't say it's common, but I would say it's becoming a lot more popular now. You're going to see a lot of bourbons finished in wine barrels or bourbons finished in sherry or port barrels. And there's also a couple different distilleries that are also doing ryes finished in Caribbean rum casks. But Angel's Envy, Lincoln Henderson is the first person to ever start that practice. So our name, Angel's Envy, comes from when he and his son were doing their first run. So they were aging things, they were finishing them, they were trying to figure it out. And as you all know, I'm sure, and there's a practice in which as you're aging the whiskeys in these big giant rick houses, the whiskey gets its flavor from interacting with the barrel. And so as it gets hotter and colder, it's going to cause through evaporation, the liquid inside of that barrel interacts with the wood around it and either pulls the flavor in or it's expands out into the wood. So it's just the longer it is, that's why you get a lot of those oakier tastes across both bourbon and scotch. This is true for aging or even rums too. The longer it sits in the barrel, it's going to taste oakier because of that interaction with the wood that's constantly happening. And as you have that push and pull of the expansion and God, what's the opposite? The expansion and minimizing of the liquid inside. Some of it is also getting evaporated. And that's why when you open, you can fill up a barrel all the way. And after 1 year, you're going to open it up and a little bit less is going to be in there. And in Kentucky, it's a 5% loss every year because it's such a high humid environment. And it gets so hot in the summers that it pulls a lot of that water out. And what is lost into the ether, what's lost into the sky, is what's called the angel share. And this is true across, again, all whiskey world. It's called the angel shares, whatever is not left in the barrel. And when Lincoln and Wes Henderson finished their first round and they made the bourbon, they aged it, they then finished it in port wine barrels. Lincoln Henderson tasted it and he said, we've finally gotten a better deal than the angels have gotten themselves. And so that's with a little tongue in cheek. We now call our whiskey Angel's Envy because it's the whiskey that the angels could never get to. Our distillery is in Louisville. Have you guys been to Louisville? No? Oh man. You would this is a crowd that would absolutely love Louisville. It's just bourbon town. It's crazy. You can't throw a rock without hitting 5 different bars. It's one of the funniest places I've been because I always like to say it feels like there's more bars there than people. And there's actually, our Louisville rep just told us when you count all of the barrels for bourbon in Kentucky, there are 5 times more barrels than there are people in the entire state of Kentucky because it's such a whiskey town. And it was really important to the Henderson family to have their distillery in downtown Louisville to embody that spirit and that character of tradition and that passion that the people there have for their whiskey. And so our distillery is the first open and operating distillery in downtown Louisville since Prohibition. Actually, it's along what's called Whiskey Row. It's right off of the river where they get the distillant for all the water for their distillant. And we broke ground there in 2013, opened our doors first in 2016, and just finished a giant renovation in 2022. Excuse me, it's rated the #1 distillery visit on TripAdvisor. So I highly recommend going. It's a beautiful, very modern looking space. It's gorgeous on the inside. I can send you guys some pictures of it. I think there's some in the invitation. Right, Vadim?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So that's our big, beautiful distillery. It's where we love to make our whiskey. And I'm going to stop talking for just one moment now for us to drink a little bit because, wow, I know I need a drink. So if you guys want to take your new make and just sip, maybe give it a smell, sip a little bit of it. And one of the unique things about Angel's Envy is that we distill in both column and pot stills. So our first distillation is going to be through a big giant column still, and it comes off of that spout, I guess. I know there's a term for it. It comes out of that first distilling process at 124, and then it goes into our copper pot stills and is re-distilled again, and it comes off of there at 134. And that's when we put it into our barrels. So what you're tasting now is pretty similar to what a lot of people think of as moonshine. It's our unaged whiskey. It's our same mash bill so what you're sipping now is the same mash bill for bourbon, for triple oak, and for all of our single barrel and cask strength releases. It's 72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley. I'm not sure. They didn't let me know which new make this is. So you let me know if it tastes like a 120 or 130 proof. Um, is anyone tasting anything specific, or does it taste bourbony at all to anyone?
I get yeast.
Yeah. It's
Yeast and corn.
Yep.
Yeah, get the corn.
Yeah, which I think it's so fun to taste these things side by side because you really get a feel for how much the barrels that the whiskey goes into influences the bourbon that comes out of it. Cool. So now that you've had that,
So I all of these. I mean, of course, the rye is not, but are the other ones, are they the same, basically the same new make, and it's just the barrel that makes a difference?
yes, actually, it's across the board, it's the same mash bill, which I also think is something that's really special about Angel's Envy is that because we only work with one new make and one substance, it is a huge testament to also our new master distiller, who I forgot to mention. His name is Owen Martin, and he worked before with a Colorado whiskey that also experiments a lot with finishing. And he comes from a Scotch world. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should also be paying attention to this chat. Lots going on. um, he comes from Scotch World, and so he's also super passionate about the way that the wood interacts with the distillant and how to flavor that differently. So if you want to now move on to your bourbon, I can talk a little bit about how.
By the way, to answer Henrik's question, I think the new make would be the same on all of them except the rye, right?
Yes.
Yep.
This is the
Yep.
bourbon new make.
That would be my.
Yes, the new makes the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys
But
are pretty proud of your mash bill. Sorry, I had to walk away to get my glasses. You
no,
talked about the mash bill.
good.
You're
Yeah, the mash bill is 72% corn, 18% rye, 10% malted barley.
I think you used to make shirts that literally just said that on them.
72, 18, 10. Yeah. Yeah. It was when there was a big trend going around. But yeah, that was our most popular shirt by far.
I
It's
think that was the Mashville pancakes that Ashley made for us.
Oh, how
Yeah.
fun. Oh, I love
Yeah,
Ash.
she went and ground up flour from corn, rye, and barley, and then combined them in those parameters.
She's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so oh God, what was I gonna say?
The nose on this new make is so fruity. It's so good.
I think too, a lot of that comes from our double distillant. So, as someone who used to be a big Scotch drinker, all the Scotches that I always really enjoyed were pot stills. Because when you distill with something like a pot still, what it does is it contains a lot more of those congeners into the juice. And congeners are kind of, they're like how you can think of like how mold flavors cheese is how a congener flavors the whiskey. And so copper pot distilling to me is my favorite because I think that it keeps a lot more character inside of that distillant and it gives it a little bit more robustness, especially on the nose. It's less about being a clean taste and more about complexity, which I really enjoy. So first it's the column still to get that clean, consistent flavor, and then it goes through the pot still to give it a little bit more character. And that's what you're tasting now. And then that goes into our barrels, which are American white oak, and they're a level 3 char. And it's going to be aged in those barrels for our bourbon. It's anywhere from 4 to 6 years. So in order for it to be labeled as a bourbon in general, to be a Kentucky straight bourbon, it has to be a minimum of 2. And we wanted to really have an elevated product. And so we have a minimum of the double legal requirement because Lincoln Henderson also thought that that was the perfect spot on the nose in order for it to interact with the barrel enough. And then we end it at 6 years for our flagship bourbon, which is the first one you'll be trying, just because he wants that more youthful spirit to come through. So it's less about the oak and more about the punchiness of it, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's in those barrels for 4 to 6 years, and then it's finished in port wine barrels for 6 months. And I should probably explain what finishing is, just in case there's someone who, uh, is unsure or unclear. The difference between aging and finishing is that when you're aging a whiskey, it has to stay. Yes. When you're aging the whiskey, it has to stay in that barrel for the minimum amount of years. You can't pour it into other barrels. You can't take it out and put it in something else. It has to be in that barrel for a minimum of 2 years for it to be called bourbon. After you open up that barrel, if you dump it, if you mix it, if you do anything else, it is no longer aging. So when you see, for example, with scotches, very often you'll see a number on the label. So like I have a bottle now of Aberfeldy 16 because it's a scotch that I love. And that means that the minimum number of years that is in that bottle has been sitting in that oak barrel for 16 years. It is still blended with other ages. It's a very common practice in blending. They will take very young barrels and then they'll have specific barrels in their rick houses in which they will use that in their blending process to get a more consistent flavor, because we don't use temperature controlled rick houses. We believe that it should be the spirit of Kentucky in order for it to be the most natural, most close to the earth thing as possible. It has to be something that the climate then is influencing. And so that means that you're going to have some years that are super dry and you're going to have some years that are super wet and super humid. And that is going to affect the amount that juice inside of the barrel inflates and contracts within, like we were talking about earlier. So when they go through and they blend it together, they're blending it together for a more consistent flavor profile. And in the House of Angel's Envy, we have our distilling process, and then we have our blending, our first blending. So this is when we blend just the bourbon bottles. So it's going to be aged anywhere from 4 to 6 years in that blending of the bourbon, and then we finish it. So we finish it for a minimum of 6 months in those port wine barrels, and then we blend it a second time of the finished whiskeys, and then we proof and bottle it. Yeah, what's up, Damon?
Just asking for a friend. What's a level 3 char?
A level, so that refers to when you make the barrels, they're called, God, what are they called? It'll come back to me. But there are specific houses and specific places in which they make these whiskey barrels. And so when you're making a barrel, there's a very specific process to it. So obviously there's the tree, and then they chop down the tree and they make it into staves. And then they go through a process of what's called seasoning, which means that they leave these staves out in the open air in order to reduce some of the moisture inside so that it's dry as possible before they put the whiskey in it. And then at Angel's Envy, we do 2 different levels. So first, they let it season, and then they make these beautiful barrels that are just round with open, a cooperage. Yes, thank you, Ryan. These places are called cooperages. And they have an open end on either end. And first, they do what is called toasting, which means that they'll introduce heat to the inside of the barrel. And at Angel's Envy, we use all toasted and then charred barrels. So first they'll toast it, which means they'll introduce a little bit of heat to start the caramelization process, and then they'll fully char it. And when they char it, it sounds like the most fun job in the world to me because I love setting things on fire. They just have a giant flame and they stick it inside of these barrels. And there are levels of the char that are levels 1 through 5. And it depends on the distillery. It depends on the master distiller. Some people don't use a toasting process at all. we do because I use a lot of cooking analogies. I think of it a lot as like charring your steak before throwing it in a broiler, in which you're introducing you're bringing a lot more flavor to the front of that barrel before introducing the fire inside of it. And when you char those barrels, that's when you're going to get a lot of the different characteristics of the different wood, which we'll get into when we talk about triple oak. But that's when you're going to get a lot more vanilla, a lot more smoke, a little bit more if you haven't tried it yet, I highly encourage now would be a good time to sip that bourbon. Nose it first and then sip it. And I like to take it in little spaces. So the way that I was taught to drink whiskey is first to sniff it just a little bit and then put it down and let it go for a few seconds, because that just like opens up your nose. It opens up all of your sinuses to say, hi, hello, I'm alcoholic. And then you can go back through and sniff it again. And you should be getting a little bit more complexity on that second sniff, just because it's going to open up your palate a little bit more. When I smell the bourbon, I smell a lot of dark cherry. I smell a lot of vanilla, and I smell a little bit of honey. And so you can think of those things that it's reminding you that you're smelling before you go in for your first sip. And I always recommend just taking a little tiny sip again, because it's going to open up. Well, you guys have all had the new make, so you're ready to drink. But that first sip is just meant to open up your senses a little bit and to introduce your body to the aggressive flavor profile that alcohol just brings to every palate. It's going to open it up a little bit. And then again, let that sit for a few seconds. Don't drink water here. Don't, if you ever eat something in between the first and second sip, it's going to interrupt your palate. So I always say, if you want to drink water, drink it after the second sip. And then on your second sip, you should be able to feel. Sorry, spider was crawling on me. Oh, anyway, on that second sip, that was absolutely terrifying. I'm so sorry. I really don't like spiders. You should be able to taste a little bit new things. On the bourbon. Oh man, sorry. Give me 1 second.
We need a spider break.
Yeah, no, but actually.
Now, Vadim, this would be a good, clip to put on YouTube.
Oh man, yeah, okay.
If I knew how to do that, it would be golden.
Oh, I might throw up. I really hate spiders.
The whiskey's so good.
Yeah. Great.
Take a moment. It's okay. Get your thoughts. You're gonna be okay.
Sorry, that really threw me off.
Yeah, you would think the two cats would do a better job protecting you.
They're literally useless. They're completely useless. And now I used my whiskey book to like smash it.
Now you're going to need a new whiskey book.
Truly. I should really just burn this whole house down. Anyway, okay.
But you're an Arizona girl. Spiders or nothing.
No, spiders are terrifying in Arizona. Have you ever
That's what I mean. So you probably California, they're little spiders.
Yeah, you would think that like my fear of them would tame as much as the spiders themselves have. Kill it. Thank you, Jane. Exactly. And you would think the cats would. Anyway, yeah, you guys are so right. My cats are lazy. They don't do anything for me. Okay. Anyway, sorry. I'm fully ready to move on now. So when we talk about also tasting these bourbons and these flavor profiles, I also would like to open up the door to whiskey is meant to be an evocative spirit. It's meant to remind you of certain times or certain places. And that's why I think it's such a special spirit to celebrate with. And for me personally, when I drink the Angel's Envy bourbon, It reminds me of my mom used to buy these like Walgreens Queen Anne chocolate covered cherries every Christmas. And it's really shitty chocolate, really shitty cherries, but they're somehow all together. They were my favorite Christmas dessert. And every time I drink the Angel's Envy bourbon, it makes me think of those really sugary, really liquid chocolate, but still with that hint of jam inside of it. And that's another reason again why I love this spirit so much, because I think it is something that it can just tap into like a weird little memory you have of something. So that being said, if you smell or you taste and you're like, wow, this tastes like, one time I had whiskey and I was like, this tastes like melted crayons. Like, there's no tasting profile that I think is too weird or too funky to share out loud. So if at any point you taste something and you're like, hey, this is a weird thing for me, there's also a weird thing that I'm sure you guys have experienced in these whiskey tastings, that sometimes someone will be like, wow, I taste apple pie. And then all of a sudden you go back in and you sip it and you also taste apple pie. So that being said, is anybody getting any fun profiles or flavors from it? Yes. Yes, Pam's iPad. Environmental Terrier is exactly it. Cool. Well, then I didn't even realize the time. I'm just chatting away. So let's,
So this triple oak. So what's the I mean,
yeah.
what does that mean for you? I guess.
I love that question. I was just about to say, let's jump into triple oak. So
We weren't there yet. So, oops, sorry, I skipped
okay.
ahead.
We're there now. You're good. So Triple Oak is still a finished bourbon, but this is our very first release ever commercially, in which it is not finished in a wine or a spirit barrel. So Triple Oak is finished in 3 different oaks. It's aged in the American oak, and then it's finished in French, Hungarian, and Chinkapin oaks. French and Hungarian oaks are used pretty commonly in a lot of Scotch and a lot of different whiskeys. Chinkapin is new to the game. Chinkapin gives it a little bit more zest and variety. It's going to have a lot more lemon, a little bit more of a pop. Hungarian is a very heavy wood, so it's going to have a really strong flavor of oak, of smoke. It's very leggy, I guess is the word I want to use. And then French oak is the soft oak. So it's the one that brings them all together. It has a lot more cherry in it. It's used mostly for wine, actually, because it is an oak in which that it influences the spirit without overriding it, as opposed to something like Hungarian. So we call it triple oak in a nod to what it's finished in. The whiskey in front of you that you're
So
sipping,
they're all 3 virgin barrels?
yes, all 3
Oh.
virgin barrels. There is a little bit of, as we move forward, I know that Owen's experimenting a lot with first and second fill, but from what you're drinking right now, it's all a virgin barrel. And virgin barrel
Is that barrels that are made of all the different woods, or is it separate barrels?
Great question. It's 3 separate barrels, and the whiskey is finished in those barrels separately and then blended together. So the juice is not introduced 1, 2, 3. It's finished in these and then blended outside of it. And so that's a distiller's secret. He doesn't share with us how much of each barrel goes into the bottle that you're sipping, but it is a blend of those 3 finished bourbons. It's also a little bit higher than our classic bourbon. Our flagship bourbon is 86 proof. This one's going to be 92. And the nose, I agree with you, Damon. I also get a lot of pepper and it's, I think, a genius addition to our lineup, in my opinion, because the number one feedback that we get about Angel's Envy is that it's a sweeter spirit. And Triple Oak, I think, is a much bigger nod to a traditional flavor profile of bourbon. It's going to have a lot more of that oak. It has a lot more of like, this is what I would call my camping whiskey, where when I'm sitting in the woods and I want a bourbon, this is what I'm going to want to sip. It's warm and homey without being overbearingly sweet.
I mean, I think there's a reason why this is the only bottle of Angel's Envy that I own.
Yeah. Are you a big bourbon guy?
I'm this group will know I'm peated Scotch, Irish, and then bourbon.
Same,
So
actually.
But yeah, I picked this one up. There was a rep locally that did the engraving in the store.
Was his name Elijah?
It was a young kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, super nice guy. So I almost didn't even bother to taste because it was bourbon. Because let me try, and he served me one other one, and then this one, and this one. You know what? I actually like this one.
I love hearing that. Yeah, it's definitely a bourbon that I think is appeals to everyone, because especially if you still have some of that new make left, I would challenge going back and seeing how much more of a comparison, how much closer those two spirits are without a port wine finish. Is anyone trying the triple oak for the first time? I would love, if you are open, I would love to hear some of your feedback on it and how it either elevates or distracts from the entire portfolio.
Well, I don't know the entirety of your portfolio, but the triple oak is, as you said, more similar to the new than anything else so far. But it also is, for me, much more like whiskey I expected, or bourbon I expect to taste more like this than just about any of the deviations from this.
Yeah.
There seem to be, but it's very nice. I love the nose. I love the nose on the other bourbon as well. That was really nice, really homey feeling.
Very approachable.
Yeah.
This is the first Angel's Envy I've had that made me want a cigar.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's got a little
I could go for that
smokiness.
too, man. I agree with you.
Yeah, it has a little smokiness, just enough brown sugar. It's really good.
I love that. Awesome. Okay, well, we're gonna keep trucking right along. Ooh, lemon curd. That's interesting. That's a new one. I'm gonna write that one down. I love that note. All right, trucking right along. We're gonna try next what is one of my favorite spirits in the whole world. This is our Angel's Envy Rye. This is actually directly from the mind of Wes Henderson. This was his experiment. We didn't release it at first. It was an allocated bottle. Oh, I love that for you, Jane. It was an allocated bottle for a long time. And so it still has a reputation for being a lot harder to get. And I will say that it is, of the three of our portfolio, which is the Bourbon, Triple Oak, and Angel's Envy Rye, it is the most premium of the three spirits, because as opposed to, yes, the Christmas tram. I love that. As opposed to being aged for 4 to 6 years, our rye is aged for 6 to 7 years. And instead of being finished for 6 months, it's finished for 12 to 18 months in Bacardi Ocho casks. So it's a premium rye finished in a premium rum cask. It comes in at 100 proof. And we intentionally upped the proof on this one because it has so much sugar in it already. It's very much like molasses. It gives you a lot of, it's really thick, I think. It's a viscous rye for sure. And I think that higher proof on it, while it also helps it stand up in cocktails, so it doesn't get lost as much. For me, my favorite cocktail to make with the rye is a pina colada. Putting it in tiki drinks will absolutely blow your mind. It is delicious because of that rum finish. It's going to give a lot more tropical. It's going to give a lot more tiki. Anyone have any reactions to it that they want to share?
You can read mine. I love rye, and this is a very round on the nose rye. Most rye is a little more punchy. This is kind of more like kind of around your nose, and it's very pretty. It's very pretty. I like it.
I love that. Pretty.
I
Butters.
get a little bit, was it Damon said candy?
Yeah.
I'm getting like Bounty, like the coconut covered with chocolate.
Mm.
It's got a little coconut note to
Like
it,
an almond joy.
of a dark chocolate.
Getting some butterscotch after tasting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That
I
too,
could see
a little
it.
bit of
I
that
could,
caramelization. Yeah.
It-
I'm well known in the group for not liking rye. I actually would buy a bottle of this.
Yeah. That's
Not that I just like it. I would actually buy a bottle, and that's rare.
So Jane and I are on the same page. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I poured myself 5 drops because I know I'm not going to like this. I'm actually enjoying this. This is, I don't know, apparently that, and generally when I have a scotch that finished in the Caribbean rum cask, that's not for me. So when you said that, I'm just kind of, okay, I'm definitely not going to like this.
Yeah.
But no, so I guess two things I don't like combined actually makes me like them.
2 wrongs make a right.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say I think I've been very lucky in my love of whiskey and my whiskey history that I've gotten to try. Yeah, that's a good one. I've gotten to try a lot of different whiskeys and I've tasted some pretty weird stuff. And the only other rum finish that I can think that I actually was like, okay, I would drink that is the Balvenie Caribbean rum finish.
Yes.
I enjoy. Yeah. Tony's excited. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say, and you started talking. I said, this is what it reminds me of,
Yeah.
is the Balvenie Caribbean rum cask.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to retry that because I always just go for the Balvenie 12 because I don't care for the 14 rum cask.
Mm,
Yeah, the 21 Portwood is really good too.
it is.
I wouldn't know.
so what kind of wood is the rum cask, or is it
I'm sorry?
what kind of wood is that? Is that
On the rum?
yeah?
That's actually a good question. I'm not sure.
But it's a barrel that rum
I'll
was.
get back down. I'll get back to you. Yeah, but it
Okay.
is. I do know that it's from the Cardi Ocho casks. Hang on, let me focus and write this before I forget.
I'm just curious, like what type of wood they use. I know that I always walk by this bottle, because I like the other ones enough to where I'm like everybody else on here. I don't buy a lot of ryes, but when I find one I like, it happens.
Yeah. I I like rye more than I like bourbon usually. I like the spicier things. I am a huge fan of peated scotch. It's the #1 thing I'll drink privately on my own. Yeah. I always tell people if mermaids could drink whiskey, they'd drink peated scotch. It tastes like the ocean to me. Yeah.
And I lean toward the sweet. I love the bourbons because
Yeah.
I mean, before I got into whiskey and bourbon at all, before meeting Vadim and them, it was always Cavassier, right? I just drank cognac. That's all I knew.
So yeah,
You
this
know.
would definitely be up your alley.
And Hennessy was too sweet, and Cavassier was just right. And then I got to this world, and now I have 47 different types of bourbon on my.
Yeah. Very cool. So yeah, that's the rye. For the casks, I do know that it just in order for it to be distinguished as a rye, it's similar to bourbon, and then it has to be aged in new charred American oak. So it sits in those oak barrels for 6 to 7 years. And it is a mix of first and second refill on the Bacardi Ocho blend before they go in. That's why there's that parameter of 12 to 18 months. Because sometimes if it's a second refill, then it just needs longer to sit in the cask before blending. But the mash bill on this one is 95% rye, 5% malted barley. The 95.5. Cool. Let's move right along. Let's try this single barrel. So, fun little tidbit for whiskey nerds like me out there, is our single barrels, the way that we produce them, because they're all finished whiskeys. The way that I always would sell single barrels previously is that it's as close as you can get to going to distillery and sticking a straw in a barrel. And that they're not proofed down very much. They're from one barrel, they're not blended. That's it. At Angel's Envy, the single barrels that we sell, because they are finished barrels, there is a blending process of the bourbon that it goes through before going into that port wine barrel. And so the Mission barrel, I also specifically picked this single barrel for you guys because instead of being finished in port wine, it's finished in Oloroso sherry, which I, again, being a Scotch nerd, freaked out about. Oloroso sherry is a very commonly used barrel in Scotch making world, and it's very rare that you can find a bourbon in which it is paired together. For me, it's not going to be as sweet as those port wine barrels, and it's going to have a little bit more heat to it. I think that the Oloroso sherry just gives it a little bit more wiggle room in terms of letting the spirit breathe and influencing it a lot more gently. It also helps that it's, what is it? I think I wrote it down. You have the bottle, right, Vadim?
58%.
58%. Yeah. So it's a kicker. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because you said it a couple of times, but I definitely smell cherries.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I taste cherries on this. It kind of gives me that, like, in a good way, cough syrup, like that cherries.
Yeah.
Very sweet, kind of concentrated flavor. Might be coming from the sherry, but yeah, I mean, your classic Christmas spices are still in there. That's very much an Angel's Envy thing. You guys love
Yeah.
Christmas spices.
We do. I think it's interesting too, I know so many of you have such extensive bourbon collections. If you ever want to try, I would probably try the Triple Oak. Next to Woodford Reserve has a release in which they finish in different kinds of oaks as well. And Woodford has the same, because Lincoln Henderson developed Woodford, it's the same mash bill. And so there's a lot about the two distilleries that are going to be similar, but the juice itself is wildly different. And for me, I think that, I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I think that the Angel's Envy is going to be a little bit more complex. It's going to be a little bit sweeter than the Woodford is. And I think, again, it's because of that double distillant that we do. That sings through on all of our products. I agree, Damon. I always put water inside of my single barrels, just like a drop or two, or if you want to open it up with a rock. There's no wrong way to drink whiskey, in my opinion. There's the right way to drink whiskey is the way that makes you like it. And my favorite Scotsman once told me, if you put too much water in your whiskey, that's why you put more whiskey in it. So yeah, I really encourage everyone, when you're going through different whiskey tastings, to play with the different styles, because for a long time I didn't put water in my whiskey because I thought that it would temper it or proof it down too much or any of those things. But it's, especially when you get into cask strength and single barrel world, playing around with water in your whiskey is just going to help inform you in how to have a more enjoyable experience. Cool. Any more questions about the single barrel?
You guys are doing a new design for the single barrel bottles. I know.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, actually. I even brought, so I don't have the bottle that you guys are currently sipping. As all of you know, every single barrel is going to taste different barrel to barrel, just inherently. That's part of the process. But when our distillery was going through adding triple oak, having the bourbon, having the rye, a lot of the issue, not issue, a lot of the some of the challenges in the whiskey market nowadays is that every whiskey has 5 different expressions. And it's really easy to get lost on a back shelf. But our single barrels are very premium, they're very expensive, they're hard to find as well. And so we came up with a new, let me see, there's a new design on our single barrel bottles in which, oh, this is the cask strength. Do you have the bottle, Vadim?
I do. It's in the garage. I can go grab it.
Okay, no, don't worry about it. I'll just talk you through it. It's going to be a little bit more bulbous. Yeah, my single barrel's in my car. So that the bottle is going to have, let me see if I can pull up a picture and I'll drop it in the chat. Instead of having these,
It's like instead of the classic flat front and back, it's like rounded in the front. So still the same shape, but it's round in the front. I'll toss it into the I'll toss a link to the Mission barrel pick that we're sipping into the chat so people can see it. It
yeah.
looks very premium. It looks very nice. It makes
So
it easier to tell which one's the barrel pick because I have a few barrel picks on the shelf, and side by side with the other ones, it's the same bottle all the way through.
it's not going to have these like sharp edges that you see on these two bottles. So the Cask Strength has the engraving. The single barrel is still going to have the etching on the back. It's just going to be a little bit rounder and a little bit more like puffier. It's going to have a bigger puffed out chest. I guess this is like the only way I can think to describe it. But yeah, and exactly like Vadim said, it's a way so that way when you go into an account or you're looking at your own whiskey shelf, we want it to pop off the shelf a little bit. We want it to look different. We want it to be eye-catching because so much of our brand is about pushing the envelope and it's about innovation and about staying up to date all the time and always trying to be creative and to be curious. And in that way, we get to experiment with not just the whiskey itself, but also the bottles in which we present them in. So
more of a rounded front with still the flat back.
yes,
Okay.
still has the flat
It
back.
looks really nice. I actually, so I went to a conference in Vienna, Austria, and a friend of mine that lives in Poland actually messaged me. Can you bring me a bottle of this? So just the Angel's Envy. And he didn't specify which one. And I went to Mission and I saw the single cask. Well, I mean, if he's going to get something unique, so I got him that one, and it looks really nice. So
I'm glad it's nice to hear from the consumer side.
yeah, no, it does have that kind of a little premium look to it.
Yeah. Great feedback. Okay, that's gonna lead us into our final expression, which is
So before we get to the cask strength, you said the barrel picks are also a cask strength.
yes.
Okay, so I remember there that being kind of a big talking point, and maybe that's something that's changed recently. But I remember back in the day, your barrel picks weren't as hot, like at cask strength or something. They were brought down just a little bit less, so that cask strength really stood out on its own. But I guess now if they're not adding water to it, it's just the cask strength. I know it's limited, but it's like double the price of a barrel pick.
Yeah, and well, the barrel picks also they are proof down a little bit, but that's at the desire of the buyer. And so when you go to taste these different barrels and you're picking which one you want, the consumer is the one who chooses how much to proof that down by. And that's why you're going to find variation amongst these single barrels when you start like really getting into it, is that they're going to be proofed down a little bit. It just varies person to person, taste by taste. And every year our cask strength is again just like lightly watered down. It's still cask strength. But it's by the by I can't search for this word. It's by discretion of the master distiller, Owen Martin. So he's the one who says, this is where it's at, this is cask strength, we're done. And we're also, the cask strength program is also changing in that. So here I have the cask strength from 2023. It's the 59%, it's 118 proof. This is finished in port wine barrels. You can see also the new release of the cask strength that has the etching on the outside of the bottle. And it still has the little tag and it has this thing down on the bottom. The cask strength you have in front of you is the very first of its kind in that it's not only finished in port, it's finished in tawny.
We're tasting 23. We're tasting the one from Mission 2023.
Oh, you're tasting the 2023.
Yeah. The 2024 came out after we announced our event, so it's not, I don't think it's in the market yet.
I got this one at the yeah. So you're tasting the same one I have.
Yep.
This bottle I got at the distillery when I first got hired. They flew me out and I got to meet everybody and tour the rick houses and do the whole thing. It was super, super fun. Highly recommend. If you ever become a billionaire, go rent out their house on the distillery. It's incredible. Oh wow, then all of my notes are different. Well, I can now talk to you about this because I've had this one. This one is, again, a whiskey that I like to enjoy proof down a little bit. It's our cask strength bourbon. It's completely finished in, this one is, yep, port wine barrels. And I'm glad you're tasting it side by side to that single barrel too, because it's also a fun education in how bourbon expresses itself differently in different finishes. So I think that the port wine finish lends itself a lot more to those cherries. So like the port wine, that fortified wine is also a little bit more premium of a spirit. It's different from tawny in that port wine has to be aged for a minimum, I think, of 6 or 7 years. And it can only be aged in barrels that previously held wine. And so it's a little bit more advanced in terms of its flavor profile. It's going to pick up a lot more on, I think, the malted barley is where you get a lot of that sweetness, is that it does beg for chocolate. I agree. My favorite pairing with this is a dark chocolate truffle. Also, if I don't know where you are, I think most, even in Phoenix, they have a Trader Joe's. At Trader Joe's, they have these like sea salt, dark chocolate covered almonds. They're called like Turbandino chocolate covered almonds, I think. They
Yep.
are my favorite thing to pair with whiskey. It is one of, because it's got that salt, it's got a little bit of that sugar. And I think when you're drinking such high proof stuff, it's really important to have things that not only cut through that flavor, but also inform it and give you a little bit more of an experience and a journey that's not just about the spirit you're drinking. I think it's just going to go hand in hand and it just helps to tell a good story.
Yeah, I'm scared to open my 2021 because the price has gone crazy.
Yeah. I haven't opened this one for that reason, but I'm I'm gonna drink it.
Yeah, it'll happen, but maybe
Eventually.
in June it'll be my 25th year at my job, so maybe that might warrant that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I paid $200 for it in Vegas.
Good for you.
During COVID, right? We had a little townhouse and cooking, and we needed some whiskey. Went out there, and the case made me buy it. The wood case. I'm like,
yeah, we also don't have those anymore. We got rid of them just because
I was gonna ask, where's my wood box?
Yeah.
Man,
yeah.
that box is nice.
The boxes were really nice. It kind of became more about the box than the whiskey. And the presentation of the whiskey just got it was a very expensive expenditure. So yeah.
Well, we bought two. my friend Vadim knows Eric.
Yeah,
We opened Eric's bottle, so I know I like it. But
it's a good one. Any
yes,
other comments or questions about the cask strength?
I hate how good this is. I hate how much I like it.
I know. I will say too, last year we released a cask strength bourbon and a cask strength rye. Um, oh my goodness. So sorry. Bucky. Anyway. The cask strength rye is one of my favorite things I've ever had. And when I went to Kentucky, I searched up and down for it and I could not find it anywhere. It was a very special release from Owen Martin. When he took over the distillery, he found in the back of the rick house a bunch of old rye barrels that no one had ever touched. And he decided to blend and bottle them on his own. And that's why we were able to release the rye last year. It's not something that we won't ever do again, but it's much more seen as like a fun little treat to have every now and then. So it's not he has plans for more in the future, but this upcoming in December, our cask strength that's getting released is just going to be bourbon, but for the first time ever in the cask strength series, it's not going to be port wine. It's going to be a blend of tawny and ruby wines. So, well, port wines, but tawny port and ruby port. And then put together. But the cask strength is also aged for, again, anywhere from instead of 4 to 6 years, it's 5 to 9 years. And so it's a much more robust bourbon. It's got a lot more oak on it. It's got a lot more heat in it. It's got a lot more sweetness of that vanilla before getting blended together and proofed down just the tiniest bit.
The cast or no, the barrel pick one was the only one where I got like maybe some of the spiciness from the pot still,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the others I didn't pick it up as much.
I get a little bit of it in the triple oak, but I think again I think that speaks more to the finishing of those fortified wines. And it's kind of similar to my feelings on the rye and the Caribbean rum finishes. The spicier the spirit, the more it's going to heighten the sweetness. It's like when you're cooking and you need something with more flavor, so you add salt. I feel like the spiciness of the rye in the Caribbean rum finish and the spiciness of that pot still bourbon distillant in every other finish is the reason why it elevates that sweetness just a little bit more. So it doesn't, that's an interesting, sorry, that's interesting feedback to me because I do agree with you. I see what you're saying. And I think that by keeping it to a higher alcohol content, by proofing it down less, it lets that spice kick in more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had some honey sea salt almonds with it. Goes very nice.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, that sounds so good.
Did you bring enough for everyone?
Sam
I
Boltoy didn't
held
have.
one out to everyone.
The rye is my favorite too. Great. Well, do you guys have any questions about I'm
So
always
I do want to invite everyone to turn on their camera for just a second. And a few people have reminded me because I'm having too much fun and I totally forgot to do our classic photo. So get everybody on camera. There we go. Pam, Wes, Michael, hopefully. And yeah, get everyone to come on and raise a glass. Hopefully still have a little bit of liquid left. Come on, Pam. I'm dragging my feet here. There we go. Oh, Michael's on a plane. Wow. Well done, sir. Look at that. That's a true trooper. Awesome.
Are you
Everyone raise
drinking
a
on
glass and smile to the camera. Got it.
Nice.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. Cassie, thank you for organizing this. I know this wasn't easy, but it came together nicely. and I think we're all enjoying it. And it's nice to finally learn and taste through the portfolio. I know in the past we've never done a tasting just because there wasn't enough expressions to be had. So we were able to pull it together. I know it wasn't easy, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'm really, really happy I got to be here.
I know that you guys have the bourbon and the 100 ml cuties, the little miniature version of the.
Yeah, I
And
tried.
then I saw last year, I think you guys started making the rye in that, but I haven't seen it anywhere on shelves. What's going on with that? Are you still making those?
Actually, they stopped making the rye. So it was just a one-time release.
Oh wow.
I think I have like one case left in my storage unit. I'm out of most of my minis.
Oh wow.
I know. But I think also you guys kind of got the brunt end of the stick on that. It's the end of the year, so my storage unit is pretty wiped out. At the beginning,
We're still around next year, so when you get a new
I'm getting a bunch of shirts and stuff for Manhattan Week. So if you guys, if you Vadim, if you get everybody's sizes, if there'll be like long sleeved shirts, I would love to send you guys some.
love that.
Yeah. Oh,
Don't
let me
threaten us with a good time.
too. I'm gonna drop my Instagram. I do a lot all over LA. I'm all over the place all the time, but usually if I'm doing an event, I'll post it on my stories or on my feed somewhere.
Yeah, hit Cassie up directly. I don't want to deal
Yeah.
with you.
Just send me a message. I'd love to see you out and about. I'm so happy I got to introduce so many of you to the brand. I will say I have only been here for about 6 months, but everyone I've met from top to bottom is just a genuinely lovely, wonderful person. Which, if you've met Ashley Irwin, you already know. Everybody is actually that kind. So I feel very lucky to work in a place in which family and family values are actually preached, like, or actually lived, not just preached. Um, yeah.
This was great. Appreciate it.
I think
Yeah.
that
That was
rye
fun.
is the perfect Christmas dram. I was pouring it and I was like, this smells so good.
Yeah.
What won the poll?
Let's find out. All right, everybody voted? Got all the votes in?
Sounds like the rye.
And closing it down. So I threw the new make into the poll just for shits and giggles. Cassie, what do you think was the favorite of the night for this group?
Probably the rye.
Interesting. I would have guessed one of the Cask Strengths.
I would have guessed
Myself,
that,
really.
but I am also cheating by
I picked the Cask Strength because
Yeah,
that's my
everybody-
favorite.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Rye's number one with 38% of the
Nice.
votes.
It
And
does
Triple
not
Oak is
surprise me
second.
that Triple Oak is next. Yeah.
That's mind blowing. I would have gone Cask Strength. I would have guessed for this group of individuals. Usually we lean Cask Strength.
So
really
Ben,
impressive.
what would you have voted?
For me, I personally thought the rye is my me personally, the rye is my favorite of the portfolio in the core range, but the Cask Strength I was really impressed by.
Yep.
I mean, and Cassie, you can take this for what it's worth. We've now done what 3-4 bourbon tastings in a row. This is the only one where I'm going to go out and buy a bottle. So I already have the Triple Oak. I'm gonna and this might give people in the group a heart attack, but I'm gonna go out and buy the rye as well because that was really good. And I hate rye.
Wow.
I'm going to do
Right?
the same. I'm buying the rye.
Yeah.
Yeah. I already had a triple oak because I like oaks. And when you say three of them, I'm like, oh, gotta get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I saw
Wine in
this
the morning.
tasting, I'm like, okay, who has it? And Total Wine had it. It was new to the shelves, because once people start liking it, it disappears. You know how bourbon is.
Yeah.
Right?
Very true.
Yeah.
I
So
also will say for the Triple Oak, it is something that as soon as people taste it, they love it every time.
right. Yeah, I went back and got a second bottle like right away.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, gotta have it because it's going word of mouth. It's only 20 of us or 15 of us on this group, so it might be safe for now.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
I mean,
hopefully
it's
not.
very affordable, so it's a good bottle for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
If you're looking
Yeah,
for stocking stuffers for your bourbon friends, nobody's got this bottle on their shelf yet except us.
and
Yeah.
so Joey on here is my son-in-law. This is his first tasting. I
Welcome.
bought I bought this for him, and Angel's Envy is like his favorite bourbon right now.
Joey.
So when this showed up, I'm like, oh, I got to get him on the tasting. He's
Yeah.
never been on one of these.
Are y'all happy with your mint julep cups? Thanks to Cassie.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Great. Yeah.
Those
They're
are really nice. When I saw those, I was like, "Whoa, those are going to be out to
Right,
people."
right.
yeah. I would
Joey, I don't think you got one. Sorry, Damone got two, but you didn't get one. I don't know how that happened.
I switched. I gave him the second one.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
luckily I was able to get it. It's
I hooked him up.
kind of get into the bourbon story. It's kind of funny because I'm a tequila fan, so 100% tequila fan. So he kind of got me on some really good tequila,
Yeah.
and so I was getting out the military, and he was like, you know what, I'm gonna get you into bourbon and whiskey. I was like, no, it makes my stomach hurt. I don't like it. Now look at me, 2 years later.
Yeah.
Angel's Envy is like my top notch right now, and I've been getting all my younger friends on it, and everything that he teaches me, I kind of teach everybody else, in the younger generation. But I know definitely doing this, now, and I'm like, okay, now I need to be a part of this. So I'm now researching being a part of the tastings.
Yeah.
Just
man,
make
join
sure
the group.
make sure you join the virtual tasting society group. You will get the emails.
I will.
I will say that when I hear people say that they don't like whiskey, I feel very similar. I feel very similarly to it when people say they don't like reading. It's not that you don't like reading, you just haven't found the right book. Like you don't like whiskey, you just haven't found the right whiskey yet.
I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for my son. So I'm the opposite of you, that you just talked about. My son got me into whiskey. I was a wine guy completely. I mean, I have a huge collection of wine, but whiskey
Nice.
now is my latest filling, for a want of a better word.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
kind of
well,
got me into it was he introduced me to old fashions, and then old fashions kind of got me
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Let me just try them
I
individually.
tricked him into it.
Yeah. So
It's-
far, like right now, I
it's-
got a bottle of Angel's Envy Rye, and so I have like a Halo like kind of decanter, and so I have my rye in that, and then I just bought a bottle of Jefferson's because I know he's had me taste that. So like I'm looking at different types of bottles, and I kind of go based upon the aesthetics too. Like I kind of care less about
Yeah,
the
he likes the
price.
way bottles look.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to make one little pitch since we're talking about what everybody likes. I'm going to tell you right now, the best American single malt whiskey is in my neighborhood because I live in Oregon, about an hour away from Portland, and Westward Whiskey makes the best single malt whiskey in the country.
Westward.
No doubt. So if you want to try something different,
Westward.
go for it.
Yeah.
That's what this group is about.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, Cassie, thank you so much. This was an amazing tasting of Angel's Envy.
It
We
was.
enjoyed it. We got some new favorites out for the group. So this was great. Thank you. If you're ever doing some events out here, we got members from all over the country. A large portion of us are here in LA, but Damone's in Arizona, Jim's up near Portland. We got a few folks up in or are they Ohio folks? Michael, Randy, you guys are up in Ohio, right? There we go. Yeah, so people all over. So if there's any Angel's Envy events, feel free to toss them out in the group or let me know, and I'll share the word and come out and support you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Follow me on Instagram. It's the best way to go. I get really bad at communicating where I am sometimes because I have so many people to tell.
Right. Well, I need to get on your Instagram so I can find out where Chelsea is.
Yeah. Send me a message and I'll send you her info.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Cassie.